Welcome, here we go in the next session. Do you believe that negative people could experience biological difficulties? In other words, do you believe that stress kills, that stress causes illness? So here's a question. Do you believe that an overly emotional negative person will experience illness equal to the negative emotion? If that's the case and you believe that, well then you are absolutely correct. It is now proven that stress kills. Negative emotions cause illness and disease. We know this, there is a clear science behind it. So let's just relate some illnesses and some biological difficulties to emotions. We know this. Boredom and lack of love for what you do causes fatigue. Denying yourself of love and happiness causes heart issues. Being consistently annoyed causes bladder issues. Being critical of yourself and others causes arthritis. And extended periods of resentfulness causes cancer. So we know that there's an interconnectedness between illness and disease, or psychological and neurological difficulties, and emotions. We know this. Now, in the Quantum Affirmation Certification course, we teach this. We teach this interconnectedness, this link between negative emotions and outcomes, experiences. And it's important in that certification that you understand when teaching other people how their negative emotions have a biological outcome on their body. In other words, the story becomes the body. You've probably read the book. The biology is the biography. The biography becomes the biology. So it's important to know that. If not, and you're just doing this work for you, then make sure that you reflect on this and understand that there is a consequence to negative emotions. So I want you to ask yourself, how did you feel growing up? Now, I'll tell you my experience, because that for some people can be a difficult question to answer. Growing up, I grew up in inner city Dublin. I went to a Christian Brothers school. There was a lot of violence in the schoolyard. There was a lot of violence in the streets. There was car bombs between the terrorists that was going on in the city. So there was a lot of this going on. So in other words, I grew up in fear. That was my dominant negative emotion, was fear. What was yours? So reflect on that dominant negative emotion. It's going to be very, very important. And in a moment, you'll start to join the dots together, because you'll see that if you grew up in fear, well then your mind and body, when that was happening for you, had to teach you how to survive. And to teach you how to survive, it had to pick up and develop within itself, and it is called you, strength characteristics of survival to deal with that negative experience. So we'll reflect on that, and you'll start to really see the true sense of you. Now let's reflect on your childhood achievements. So what did you do as a child that was something outside the usual, outside the norm? And we all have it in there. And you're going to have to really, really think here. It's very important that you really think and understand that. So some of you will say, I didn't achieve anything as a child. No, it's in there. You did. Let me help you with some of it. So as a child, did you support a friend in a time of need? So maybe somebody was getting picked on and you stepped in. Maybe somebody got hurt and you brought them home to your house. Maybe somebody got hurt and you sat with them. Maybe somebody was being punished and you helped them deal with that. There was something, you need to find that. Did you save an animal? Did you comfort a parent? So if one of your parents was arguing with the other, did you go to the one who was suffering the consequence of that and just deal with them, talk to them, sit with them, make them a cup of tea, something, whatever it was, you'd done that. Well, that is an achievement that you had as a child. Make sure you write that down. Did you pass an exam that you thought you'd failed? Did you excel at sports? Or did you even become fourth in the race, not last? So whatever it was in there, find out and write that down. Best at skateboarding, where you're really, really good at doing something that others weren't. Were you better than others? Did you care for siblings? So if, for example, your siblings were being punished, did you counsel them, deal with them, talk to them, comfort them, entertain them, separate them from the difficulty that was going on? Think really, really deep and really, really carefully here. And make sure you find those things, those achievements that you obtained when you were growing up. Next, when you have these achievements written down, now I want you to reflect on the characteristics that you developed as a consequence of you having to act in this way. Here's an example. Your mom and dad are arguing. Your mom is at the bad end of the stick, the raw end of this stick. Your dad walks away and your mum is left there. And you sit down, you go over and you talk to her, you hold her hand, you speak to her, whatever, you make her a cup of tea. Well, right then you became the counselor. Right then you develop what's called emotional control. How would your parent have seen you? They would have seen you as caring and loving. So you develop the characteristic of counseling, caring, and loving just by that simple deed and simple act. So now, if you're joining the dots together, you didn't develop this caring nature that you have within you by virtue of the fact that you had to help your parent. You developed this characteristic within you as a consequence of your negative parent. Because if the negative parent didn't act that way, you wouldn't have had to counsel your mom to develop that characteristic that you own. So now, if you're joining the dots, you're starting to see that all of the strength characteristics that you had growing up, you developed them thanks to the negative people in your life, because it was those that put you into survival mode to develop the characteristic in the first place. Let me give you an example of that. If you lived in the hills of Lukla in Nepal, you would be very, very good at traversing rocks, at running on rough, because there's no roads, there's no paths, you can't cycle a bicycle because there's just everything is up and down. So you learned to be very, very active, to be very creative, to be very careful of your environment. So these people develop all of these characteristics. Now, if I brought you from Lukla to Namche Bazaar in Nepal, you would absolutely struggle to make that journey, whereas the locals just traverse that journey with no bother whatsoever. So in other words, because of the negativity of the environment that they live in, they develop strength characteristics that you don't have. Same here. Because of the negativity of the environment that you grew up in, you develop strength characteristics that help you in that situation at that time. And these are the very strength characteristics that are embedded into the nature of who you are. They're called your nurtured characteristics. And these are the characteristics that you can display as you go through your life, which you can tie in later as we go through this course into your goals to become the achiever that you want to become. So make sure you list out the characteristics that you had to achieve here. Next, for the next session, I want you now to sit with me for a moment. And I want you to just close your eyes. And just close your eyes. And just keep your eyes closed for a moment. And as you keep your eyes closed, I want you to go back to when you were between the age of 6 and 12, somewhere in there. And I'm going to ask you now, what age are you? You might say, I'm 8, 10. What is that age? Now, I want you to see yourself with a friend. Now, some of you will struggle with this, and that friend is close to you in age. It might be a sibling close to you in age. It might be a cousin. It might be somebody from school. You're with somebody. I just want you to see that person and just reflect on that person. So go back to when you were younger, between the age of 6 and 12, and be with a friend. Now, you can open your eyes and come back to me for a moment. Now, just remember that friend. Remember what they look like, what color hair they have, and what they're wearing. And now, we'll see you in the next session. Let's go deeper.